I would like to ask the Minister for Environment, Food and Agriculture if he will make a statement on the progress made with introducing animal welfare legislation and whether consideration will be given to including protection for service animals.
On the Minister to reply, Mr. Burt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Following on from my written answer to Mr. Hooper's question in the Keys on the 16th of April on what progress has been made with the preparation of the Animal Welfare Bill, I have to inform the Honourable Member for Garff that in spite of best intentions, the workloads related to Brexit have been much larger and are continuing much longer than anticipated, especially for the Chief Veterinary Officer and the Animal Health team who are affected by the livestock import and export implications. As a result, no significant further progress has yet been made on the Animal Welfare Bill. With regard to the consideration of including a protection for service animals, I am pleased to report that officers of the Department recently met on the 12th of June with a delegation consisting of a local resident and founder of Finns Law UK to discuss the subject. Finns Law being the name given to the recent legislation in England and Wales that is designed specifically to extend animal welfare legislation to include service animals, for instance police, horses and dogs. As a result of this, I am intending to include an appropriate section on service animals in the draft Animal Welfare Bill when it goes out to consultation. We do, of course, have existing animal cruelty legislation, though that has a much higher threshold for enforcement. Therefore, I remain fully committed to the introduction of animal welfare legislation, and it will be a high priority after Brexit. Thank you.
Supplementary, Mrs. Caine.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the Minister for his answer, but I would ask, can he give us any likely time frame for bringing forward the bill? He said in 2017 that you hope and anticipate this would be this legislative year, which obviously has fallen back. But as well as the time frame, can he give any indication, as well as Finns Law provision perhaps, what other animal welfare protections and improvements will be contained in the draft bill?
Mr. Burt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I made it fairly clear in the original answer that the Brexit workload has supplanted what we were trying to achieve in bringing forward the animal welfare legislation. At the moment, that doesn't seem to be coming to a conclusion, the 31st of October being the date that UK may Brexit or may not, but in the meantime there is ongoing dynamic alignment with the UK in terms of much of the agriculture sector and how we work, so that is ongoing and very demanding. I would like to think that Brexit will resolve itself over the next few months, one way or another, which will give us a direction of travel, and at that point I'm happy to commit to progressing the animal welfare legislation. With regard to what that will include, there was a thorough consultation and a lot of work carried out with stakeholders, and it is basically around safeguarding the welfare of companion animals on the island, and in that respect horses, dogs and cats come to mind, but there will be a wide range of areas including animal sanctuaries, feral animals and welfare of companion animals in sea transit, etc., that will be covered by the bill.
Honourable Member Mr. Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. President. Whilst I appreciate the Minister's optimism in respect to Brexit, I'm not sure I concur with his assessment of the situation. He says he's not made any significant progress on this bill, which really is business as usual for his department. I suspect that statement would apply to many areas within his department. Can I ask that, seeing as he's acknowledged that it is specifically the Brexit issues that is causing these delays to business as usual, and that Treasury specifically set up a Brexit fund to make sure this didn't happen, can I ask what additional resources the Minister has sought or is using, specifically in this area, his veterinary services within the department, to make sure his business as usual is not being impacted by Brexit as far as possible?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have had extra legislative resource in the department, and when I talk about the workload, I made a presentation to members recently, and there are further EU regulatory changes in this order paper. Initially, there were about 800 pieces of legislation, and I think in terms of review, that extended out to some 1,200 pieces of legislation. So the workload has been very tasking, to say the least. In addition to that, because a lot of the items involved animal health, as I said in my earlier reply, the Chief Veterinary Officer and his team have been inordinately included in that workload and the work stream. So it is his team that will help with the drafting instructions and progressing the welfare bill. And as soon as he is released from some of the things that he's doing at the moment, we will progress it. Brexit is obviously a factor in that.
Mr Hooper.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I thank the Minister for again confirming that his department has sought additional legislative support in respect of Brexit, but that wasn't the question that I was asking. The question I was asking is what additional support is he giving to his business as usual units, like the Chief Vet and their team, to make sure that their business as usual is not being impacted by Brexit? It would seem to be the answer is none.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. We do what we can within the department. That certain areas are very expert areas, and veterinary officers are. We have not contemplated recruiting additional veterinary officers, although there have been staff changes in the recent past. As the Brexit workload will come to an end, and hopefully sooner rather than later. Perhaps I am somewhat optimistic, but a lot of the work has now been done. Veterinary medicines, etc., have been for the court, and I am hoping that some of that resource will be available. But in answer to your question, there has been no additional resource in that particular area.